You know, when they try to put weight on a sumo wrestler, what they do with him is they don't let him eat all day long, and then they let him binge all night long. And so what happens is his body's in starvation mode, and then when he hits the calories, first his body says, oh, thank God, calories. So it takes the calories, and the first thing it does is it stores it in his energy reserves, which is his fat. So though actually, rather than you would think, oh, feed him all day long, put him at the trough and feed him all day long, he'll maintain or lose weight that way. But if you let him gorge rather than graze, he'll put on weight. The lowering of a dieter's BMR may cause a physiological change that makes weight gain easier after the diet is broken. So now that the BMR has changed and you've lowered your BMR, now when they get sick of their diet, because they're dying, and they start pounding the calories or bringing back to their normal American diet, it makes weight gain easier. And this is what sets up that whole yo-yo thing, along with all kinds of other factors that we talk about with glycemic index and insulin and what's happening with their sugar and stuff like that. Resetting your set point. You will not healthfully lose weight unless you change your set point. So the set point is the internal mechanism of your body to store how much body fat it's storing. To date, the only known way to lower your set point is through physical exercise. So you can't change it by diet alone. You have to do physical exercise to lower the set point, which is the amount of body fat your body's going to hang on to in its equation with our body working with what you're doing to it. Exercise programs your body to store less fat if done aerobically. We'll get into the aerobic and anaerobic thing here in a few more slides, but your exercise program programs your body to store less fat if done aerobically. Resetting your set point. Regular aerobic exercise improves your health and fitness. It gives your body more oxygen and energy. It allows it to burn fat as fuel rather than sugar. And it helps you accelerate your metabolic rate so that you become a virtual fat-burning machine. Who wants to be a virtual fat-burning machine?
I do.
I do. There we go. So that's aerobic exercise, and we'll get into how we figure out what that is. The Harris-Benedict formula. This is a formula that uses your BMR, so your basal metabolic rate, that we can find out from that equation. And then it applies it to your activity factor, so how much you move in a day or exercise, to then now determine your total daily energy expenditure. So your BMR is just the basic energy required if I sat you in that lazy boy all day long. Just like with our water intake, how I said the ½ ounce of water per pound of body weight is if I sat you in that lazy boy all day long. So that BMR that I just showed you, that's just going to give you a total amount of calories for if you were sedentary all day long. So now we have to apply the Harris-Benedict formula to figure out how many calories we should be taking in a day to maintain weight, to lose weight, or to gain weight. The only factor emitted by the Harris-Benedict equation is lean body mass. So remember, leaner bodies need more calories than less leaner ones because obviously the fat storage. So someone with less fat on their body is going to need more calories as they're active than someone that's less leaner because their body will use that fat storage to use for energy. Okay? So the equation will be very accurate and all but the very muscular, which will underestimate their calories, and the very fat, which will overestimate the calorie needs. So here's the Harris-Benedict formula stuff. If you're sedentary, which means little or no exercise, you take your calorie calculation, which is your BMR, times 1.2. If you are lightly active, which means light exercise or sports 1 to 3 days a week, it's your BMR times 1.375. Moderate activity, which is moderate exercise and sports 3 to 5 days a week, your BMR times 1.55. Very active, hard exercise sports 6 to 7 days a week every day. Calorie calculation is BMR times 1.725. Extra active, very hard exercise sports, physical job, plus training or twice a day training is BMR times 1.9. So those are the calculations that's going to show you the total number of calories you need to in order to maintain your current weight. But remember, if you drop below your BMR, which is the basic energy required for the day, which most times is going to fall on that 1,100 to 1,200 calories a day. If a person limits or goes on their diet and cuts down below that, their body goes into survival mode and it's going to store fat. So the BMR is just if you were sedentary all day long. Sedentary, but you still move around the house and whatever, however you consider that, it's BMR times 1.2. Okay?
Okay, hold on.
Okay? Amy, I'll go back at the end and I'll show you a calculation what I mean by BMR too.
Okay. What was it? Now, what is the extra active? How much a week? Or?
Very hard exercise or sports. And a physical job. So let's say I was a framer and I was framing houses and going to the gym, I would call myself extra active.
Okay.
Okay? Stress physiology. So that's how we figure out our calories, our BMR, so then we know how many calories we need to eat a day of the right foods that we're going to eat, which is through our hunter and gatherer nutrition most of the time. What happens when we're stressed? ACTH, which comes from your brain, stimulates the adrenal glands to release corticoids, including cortisol, corticosterone, and cortisone. Over the long term, elevated cortisol may be as detrimental to overall health as elevated cholesterol and elevated blood sugar. Stressed situations. Excessive cortisol release leads to a lower testosterone to cortisol ratio. Just hormones, gets into the sex hormone thing and how your body can build muscle. As cortisol continues to increase because of stress, chances for muscle atrophy, impaired immunity, vitamin depletion, and increased blood pressure occurs. Remember, we evolved from the hunter and gatherer. Our physiology is there for a reason. When the saber-toothed tiger jumped out and said, "Rawr," he had to decide if he was going to fight or flee. When that happens and that put him into a stress situation, his body produced cortisol from his adrenal glands, stimulated by ACTH coming out of his brain, and that did that so his adrenaline and his cortisol, so then he could run away from the tiger, okay? Today's day and age, we still have the tiger. Life. But if we're not running and burning up that cortisol, different physiological and chemical processes are going to happen in our body. Thyroid production and sex hormones shut down. He wasn't thinking about metabolizing his food as he was escaping and fleeing from the tiger. He wasn't thinking about sex when he was escaping and fleeing from his tiger. So when we talk about people with thyroid issues or hormonal issues, my thought is it's secondarily to adrenal fatigue, adrenal exhaustion, adrenal stress, cortisol. Stress increases carbohydrate cravings due to the neurotransmitters neuropeptide Y and serotonin. So those are chemicals that come from your brain. You don't need to know what they are. They're just, stress increases carbohydrate cravings by screwing up hormones in your brain, basically. Cortisol tends to promote the storage of fat, specifically to the abdominal area where it can quickly be utilized for the fight or flight response. So in stress situations, if we're not burning up that cortisol, this is all happening because the body's smart, not stupid, and it needs the energy. And that's so it goes into a survival mode, and this is what it does. So then it has the energy. Cortisol secretion, which comes from your adrenal glands, I sit on top of the kidneys, in men is strongly associated with abnormalities in glucose, insulin and lipid metabolism, which is fat metabolism, as well as abdominal obesity. Stress. During intensive strength training, anaerobic, that's done anaerobically, the type of training used to transform bodies, which is weight training, resistance, the body enters a catabolic state where there is a net breakdown in the body. Okay, but don't we have to lift weights and don't we have to have some resistance to challenge our bones and strengthen our bones to resist osteoporosis? Yes, but we don't do that all the time. Aerobic exercise is obviously, well, or not obviously, but aerobic exercise is what we need to, and I'll get into this as more. I'm just kind of setting a little bit of a foundation, so some of it might be confusing, because we do need resistance exercise as well.